Well, without further ado, I am very happy to introduce our speaker today, who is Robert Thrower, who has served as the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Poarch Band of Creek Indians in Alabama for over 14 years. He has also recently served as the Director of the tribe's Calvin McGee Cultural Management Authority. In these two positions, he was directly responsible for all aspects of Poarch Creek cultural education, museum development, and tribal historic preservation. In 2009, he was elected as the chairman of the Culture and Heritage Committee for the United and South and Eastern Tribes, and presently holds this position. This committee represents the culture and heritage concerns of 26 federally recognized member tribes along the northeastern and southeastern United States. He is also an ordained minister and traditional practitioner of Creek medicine. He has provided traditional teaching for participants within the Tribal Drug Court Program and various tribal youth organizations. As well as teaching, he is a certified tribal artisan, writer, storyteller, playwright, filmmaker, and poet. Robert's mother, Nina Gale Thrower, worked for the tribe for over 30 years. Her historical and genealogical research was instrumental in the tribe becoming federally recognized in August of 1984. With all of those many credits, I think you'll agree with me, we have a particularly valuable and important person to come to talk to us today about Creek Indian medicine. So please join me in welcoming Robert Thrower.
Well, it's good afternoon, not good morning. I have to remind myself of that. I've had a wild travel schedule. I travel about 2,000 miles a month. I've been doing that perhaps since May, and that's not counting flight time. So normally I don't look at notes or from a PowerPoint, but if you don't mind, what I'm going to do is there's the first portion of this presentation. I'm going to be relying on some notes because this is a topic that I don't speak about very much. This is something that's been a part of my life for over 30 years. And, I will say this, we're talking about Creek Indian medicine, and that is not, in the last few years, that has not been a very popular subject of discussion. So I'm really grateful. Michael Flannery, I met him about a year ago. We met each other, and he's like, will you come and give a talk? And you got to get me about a year ahead of time. So, and I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for UAB for making this possible, for Michael here and all the hospitality that's been shown. I'm grateful to my tribe for letting me do this. I might get paid for this. It's like, this is my idea of fun, And so I'll be at Auburn University in 2 days doing a Creek War Symposium. It's the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, the Creek War of 1813-14, which some of you may not know anything about. And we're doing a 2-day symposium. I'll be a speaker there. But this subject matter today is like this room, multifaceted. Okay, I love this room, by the way. Edge of chaos. You look at all the diversity in here and all the different points of view and all the artistic expressions and angles, and I have to say that Creek medicine is a deep subject. I'm not going to be able to barely even touch into this. I'm going to be very limited in what I share with you today because it is such a comprehensive subject. But let's start out this way. Everything has a beginning. And let's first address the subject of how does one traditionally become a medicine person. Now, I don't use the term medicine man. I call myself a traditional practitioner. There's a reason for that, because there is so many misconceptions about medicine man. Can you imagine when I get up and introduce myself and I say, I'm an ordained minister and a medicine man? And it's inevitable somebody from the crowd's going to come up and go, isn't there some contradiction with that? Give me 5 minutes, we can clear that up. But how does one traditionally, in Creek society, Muskogee Creek culture, how does one become a medicine person? And before I do that, I want to ask those, I like to participate. I want to ask you out here in the audience. Now, I know there's medical faculty here, there's physicians here, there's interns here, there's people that's working or working towards the medical profession. And I know you didn't enter this world easily. I know that the medical world is very vigorous in terms of the preparation for it. You had to, or you're currently going through, all sorts of fun things. Rigorous academics, grueling tests, intense clinical training and experience to get to the point that we call now, which is a very important point in time for Indians, as we'll get to now. Where you are today. Now, certainly, the world of medical practice is not for everyone. There's a lot that are seemingly called into this, but when it comes down to it, they don't all make the grade in the end, do they? The world of medical practice is an intense one. And rightly so, because you have entered into and committed yourself to one of the greatest responsibilities upon earth, one of the highest forms of human service, and that is of a healer. Now, in this process, did you ever have a moment of doubt? Can I really do this? Am I doing the right thing, that which I'm best suited for? Am I in the right area of practice? Do I have what it takes to be an effective, responsible leader? You ever had thoughts like that? Now, maybe there's somebody here today that's wrestling with those questions, or maybe in other parts of your life similar to that. That's a painful thing and a good thing, because it proves one thing that you really need. You need to have a conscience. Not everybody has one. I'll say that. I've met a lot of people in my life, unfortunately, that don't have a conscience, and that's a scary thing. And even though I never had formal training, medical training, I did have a pharmacology class for my substance abuse minor. I have a triple bachelor's degree in social work, psychology, and education. So in order to get for my minor for a substance abuse, I had to take a pharmacology class, which not only helped me with my minor, but also with my traditional work. It helped me understand the plant study. So it served a twofold process. I went through a similar process several years ago in relationship to traditional healing. I want to tell you a story. I mean, you ever heard the term calling? You know, somebody says they have a calling about that? Some people don't believe in that, but I can tell you today there is such a thing. And what it was, I had no one specifically to talk to at my tribe about what I was experiencing. I'm from the Poarch Creek Indians. And we have had, as I'll tell you about later, we've had traditional practitioners all through time, but if you follow with me, you'll understand when I said I didn't have anybody to talk to at a higher level with this. I needed some confirmation and validation about what was happening to me, because many years before I had a similar experience when I got called and literally compelled into a thing called ministry work. I could not see myself doing that. I didn't want to. It was about a year of struggle with me to submit to that. Well, I finally did. It turned out fine. And this experience had given me some familiarity with the process of what I call a calling. And I had learned the hard way not to resist a sense of calling and to just embrace it. Just go with the flow and embrace it, and rather than fight it. So when I got the call, after 18 years of ministry experience and pastoring 4 churches, etc., when I got the call to go into Creek Indian medicine, fortunately, I had some prior experience, and I said, okay. And I know why this happened to me. I know why this happened to me. Now, you won't be able to see this very well. You can come up after I get through speaking to see this. But it happened primarily because of two ladies. Now, our tribe, the Creek Indians, we were matrilineal, which meant everything went through mom, right? And in my case, my Creek heritage, I'm 1/4 Creek. My Creek heritage comes through my mother's line. This is my mother, Gail Throll. And my mother, Gail Throll, worked for the tribe for 32 years. She was extremely instrumental. She did all the genealogies you mentioned earlier to get us fairly recognized. On my birthday, August 11th, 1984. What was really significant about her in terms of traditional knowledge was my great-grandmother, Zeppi Rowland, was the last fluent speaker of the Muscogee Creek language at our tribe. The last traditional female practitioner. She was a medicine woman, and I don't mean just dealing with ailments and physical things. She dealt with the entire multitude, spiritual, psychological, emotional. She had a stroke. The last 10 years of her life, she was confined to a bed, and I am still finding people that were bringing people to her for healing. She'd always make the person leave that brought them in. Like, if you came in, somebody brought you in, she'd always make the other person leave. You would be alone with that person. But my mother, Gail, as a child, talked extensively to Granny Zeffie. And Granny Zeffie, that is where my mother learned her knowledge of plants, from Granny Zeffie. How to pick them, when to pick them, what they're used for. Now I would call my mother, not even an herbalist, I would say she was an ethnobotanist. She could tell you all about the plants and what they were used for and how you pick them, but she did not ever get into the actual practice of it. She was really scared of live oils. You know, and that's a big issue, right? So anyway, at least I stepped into this world with some prior knowledge, right? And, you know, I said to myself, well, this is something I have to do. Okay, let's go with it. Well, the problem was I didn't have anybody really to talk to about it. And I rocked on for about 3 years, and I was having dreams and different experiences, interesting things, nothing bad, just interesting things were happening to me, a transformative process. And about 15 years ago, I got involved with the Culture and Heritage Committee for USAID. And that's 26 tribes. My mother had been on the Culture and Heritage Committee for a number of years. She was friends with all the tribal representatives there. And the lady I want to tell you about is Miss Ella Satoka. I know none of you know about her. Miss Ella Satoka was she is, I say is, she's in really critical health right now, but she still is the primary medicine woman for the Narragansett tribe in Rhode Island. Now, Miss Ella was and still is, in my opinion, one of the strongest and most gifted women I have ever met in my life. Everything in her tribe goes through her. Everything goes through her for her wisdom and advice. I love her dearly, but not the kind of lady you want to upset. Okay? I've seen her in action on that. You would not want to make her upset. But she loved my mother. She loved me. And by the way, that's how I got to be chairman of the Cultural and Heritage Committee. She nominated me, and there were no other nominations, and I just got it whether I liked it or not. I've been doing that for 5 years, so it's been good. But that's how I got that position. And I made a few comments about what I was going through, and I didn't have anybody at home to talk to about these things. And I was somewhat shocked when she looked at me and she said, "You can talk to me." I did so for about 7 minutes. I patiently listened, and then she said, "Are you finished?" And as we are taught in our traditional Southern Indian ways, "Yes, ma'am." And then she replied and said several things to me that day that were not just helpful, but transformative in nature. The first statement she said that I want to share with you, the 3 statements. The first one I want to share with you, she said, these are her exact words, I remember them to this day. This was years ago. She said, "There are 2 ways that the people of this world are selected to do what you are now doing. First, there are those people that are trained from childhood by the medicine people of their tribe, as in my case, the Narragansett tribe. And then there are those like yourself that were chosen by the Creator, that were born with the gift of healing, and eventually called into service later in life." Well, that made me feel better. Now, how does one become a medicine man or a medicine woman? Because you can be both in Muskogee Creek tradition. Even though Miss Ella is not a traditional Muskogee Creek, I shared her statement because it reflects something that's somewhat universal in traditional practice. And in this case, Muskogee Creek practice. There's 2 traditional ways to become a medicine person. I'm going to say person. You're either selected from childhood and specifically trained by this practice by a traditional practitioner, a process that Miss Ella described for herself. Or 2, you're gifted by the Creator, born with the abilities to make medicine. And in our language, Hiliswat, in Muskogee Creek, is the word for medicine. Now, the medicine person, use the word person, could be a man or woman, is Hilishaya, which literally translates into medicine maker. The Hilishaya was of the highest status in our Creek culture, not just among the medicine makers, but among the tribal people. There were many forms of traditional medicine makers, different levels of that, but the primary or the main Hilishaya was the one that usually lived kind of socially and politically separate away from everybody, didn't participate in a lot of things, because the idea was one had to keep oneself pure and keep one's powers in reserve until they could serve their people. And it was just a matter of being prepared, like Boy Scouts, they said, be prepared. Now, in the traditional Muskogee Creek society, the status of the Hilishaya was one of heredity, usually heredity. These abilities were literally inherited through the family, and there were exceptions and provisions of others outside in case there was no one in the family, the medicine family, that would embrace it. In our ancient society, there were no formal medical schools for group instruction. Some early anthropologists misunderstood this. They saw Hilcias talking to groups of young children. They thought, well, they're teaching them medicine. No, what they were doing, they were checking those kids out to find the one in there they worked with. That's how that worked. The traditional selection process, if you were selected for medicine training from childhood, it would be a subject that you would be constantly exposed to throughout your life. You would have been selected from early childhood. The Hilcias would have watched you closely with other tribal children, and then would eventually have made a decision to select you for training, one-on-one. You might have been selected over many other potential candidates because you were perceived as being different or unique. Anybody ever called you strange or weird? I mean, I'm sorry, but there are attributes that people have. And the majority of people let you say you're unusual. But what that is, it's a gift. And what am I talking about? You might possess insight on things, an unusual gift of ability, which also included diagnostic insight. And I've met children like this. My daughter's like that. Personality traits also, such as exceptional comprehension, personal sense of justice, even temperament, early maturity. These were factors that would play into you being selected. Now let's just say that happened to you. Say you were selected, right? You were chosen from your childhood for medicine training. Medicine making was not just a part of your life. You would know eventually that it would become your life. It was your life. Miss Ella said another second thing to me that day. She said, everything that you have seen, I have seen. I love so much about her wisdom. Very simple statement. Everything that you have seen, I have seen. Well, I figured if she's seen it and make it, I'm going to be all right. I just needed some confirmation, man. And I got a very profound sense of personal information from that. This was a person that knew exactly what I was going through. And I knew I was on the right path. But the one saying that I want to share with you today, you need to, I mean, a lot of you are thinking of Creek medicine and Indian medicine as plants and songs and drumming and this kind of thing. Let me tell you what's very powerful medicine. Words. Spoken words are very powerful medicine. They can be. They can be constructive or destructive. They can encourage or they can discourage. They can turn a life in the right direction or turn a life away into a negative direction. And I can demonstrate that for you today by sharing the third and final statement that Miss Ella shared with me. A simple statement that literally transformed my life and has transformed others' lives. By the way, before I tell you this, I got an email. I won't say who it was. I got an email from someone that heard me speak 2 weeks ago, that had heard me previously speak about a month before that. And basically she let me know that what I'm about to share with you today, these words, completely transformed her life. She changed her major. She's working on visual anthropology now. And this is what Miss Ella said to me. She said, Robert, always remember this. Everything that you need is inside of you. You just need to wake up to it. Take those words in. Everything you need is inside of you. You just need to wake up to it. And that's a lot of challenge that healers today face. Native healers face today, as we have so many modern things around us, so many distractions. But you know, when I heard that, all it really did for me, I just got this strange sense of peace from that. It didn't really hit me what she was talking about. And she bid me farewell and walked away. That was it. And I realize now those words mean so much more than when I first received them. But I know for sure it was the thing that I needed to hear at that time. You see, medicine is not just pharmaceuticals, plants, rituals, ceremonies. Medicine is life. There is good medicine and there is bad medicine. There are good words and there are bad words. And I could talk to you all day long about what that statement means to me. I'm not going to do that, but I could talk to you all day long about what that one statement means to me today. But I think maybe there was somebody here today who needed to hear that. That's why I'm sharing it. Maybe you need to hear that. As I said, Creek medicine is a multifaceted subject. You're dealing with health and well-being, physical, psychological strength, peace, social well-being, family and health well-being, purification. There were medicines for all of these things at all levels. Do you know how we got the name creeks? Now, I know I always hear this. Because y'all live next to water. Well, so did the Chickasaws, the Seminoles, Choctaws, and all the other two southeastern tribes. How did we get the name creeks? Well, the historians will tell you that certain traders, English traders along near the Savannah, they said that they noticed that we lived along a certain creek, so it's just easier to say creek than say you're from Tukabachi or Ochiabo for all these weird creek names, right? You know, from the non-Indian perspective. But I'm going to tell you how we got the name creek. I think it's very cool. Is that we lived next to the water, and every day, no matter what the weather was like, no matter what time of year was like, everybody went down to the water at daybreak. And east was the direction of life and of rebirth. So what we did is we waded out in the water, even in the winter, waist deep, faced the sun, and as the sun came over the horizon, this is documented, would dip ourselves. Some cases one time, but in many cases 4 times, would dip ourselves 4 times underwater. Now, if you are not able to make it to the water because of age, being too young, too old, whatever, they would sit you there and they would pour bowls of water over the prescribed number of times. 4 was a very important number for us. And that's how we got the name creeks. You won't read that you have to really dig hard to find that fact, but that's how we got the name creeks, because of some ceremony. You know what they call baptism? We did it every day. We did it 4 times a day. If you're like me, I need it every day. I need it every day. But the plants, obviously, I could talk to you all day long about the plants that we use, the pharmacological knowledge of the plants, hundreds of plants that we use. Do you know where idea of medicine came from? I have a story to share with you very quickly. Where did medicine come from? This is an old Creek story. And it said back in the old days, the animals were created first. And they could talk. They could communicate with each other, highly intelligent. And then this thing called man came along, which of course would be a sentence, right? Man came along, human beings came along, and the human beings were told that they were to live in peace and harmony with the animals, that they were to be good stewards of the land. And almost invariably, as will always be the case, there's always that rotten apple in the barrel. People started doing the wrong thing. They started abusing the animals. They started killing the animals. And this caught on. And finally it got to the point where the animals were exasperated. And so they had councils. This is where councils came from. They would have councils with each other. And the deer said, well, you know what? I'm tired of this. This is what we're going to do. The next time one of them just kills us for the fun of it, we're gonna inflict a disease on him, man. Some arthritis or something like that. I have long legs, so I'm gonna affect his leg. The bear, these others, they talked, and each one of them came up with the idea that we're going to inflict a disease, an ailment on these people if they're not doing right by us. But guess who our allies were? The plants. And the plants had a council, and they said, well, this is well and fine, this will maybe restore some balance, but we will remain friendly to the humans. And for every disease and for every ailment, there will be a corresponding plant cure. They will have to find that for themselves. And I say that quite a bit today. I believe that. I believe that this day, whether you believe the rest of it or not, I do believe the Creator gave us plants for that reason. And we just are in the process of trying to find them. I remember when I took pharmacology class, the figure might have changed, like 70% of prescription drugs have some plant source. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's like, I don't know if it's that high of a percentage, but a lot of drugs today, a lot of very effective drugs, chemotherapy, for Hodgkin's disease, is from the vinca alloys, from the periwinkle flower. You know, all these plants that we use still today. Aspirin, anybody taking an aspirin? Guess where we got that from? Willow bark. Willow bark has salic acid in it. And that gave me an idea to synthesize that. I mean, I could talk all day long about that. That's just one facet, okay? I want to tell you that what I think the most important and critical thing in Creek medicine, the emphasis, is on balance. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to use a very simple demonstration of this. I'm going to use my arm for this, okay? Everybody knows what a seesaw is, or a balance bar, right? Okay? and it rocks up and down. Now, in order to have this, what do you need up under, what's that thing called up under there that's centered on that board? It's called a fulcrum, correct? Am I right about that? There's a fulcrum, which is precisely centered on this board, let's say, and if it is dead center, what happens to that board? It may swing up and down. If it's balance scale, it may swing up and down, but it's going to eventually do what? It's going to even out. And what I want you to imagine is this, from a traditional perspective. I want you to imagine my arm as being, this is the circumstances of life. Now, I'm sorry, man, I don't care what goes on. Life throws you a willy down there, doesn't it? Right? You lose a loved one, you experience some trauma, or you might get sick, things like this happen. So what does this do? It throws you off. It can be stormy, can it, right? But the Indian concept was this: we didn't seek happiness. Man, you know what? I don't even think about happiness. It's a fleeting thing. When it's there, I laugh and enjoy it, and then it's gone. A lot of people seek happiness. We don't seek happiness. We seek balance, because let me tell you how this works, is that in order to be balanced, you've got to be centered. Now imagine yourself, you're this fulcrum up under here. You're this fulcrum, and let me tell you what, play with this and experiment this, see if I'm not telling you the truth. You move that fulcrum 1 centimeter to the left or 1 centimeter to the right. And how does that affect this? It offsets it, doesn't it? And it's a lot harder to get it back in balance again. It's almost impossible. And then the more you move, if you move further in either direction, it's impossible. It's just going to flop down and that's it. And in the sense of healing, we believe that the most important thing, first of all, we don't look for cures. You know, everything today is about cure this, cure that. You go to the doctor, I've got a sore throat, give me an antibiotic, I want to get rid of this. I mean, that's well and fine, that's good, there's a purpose for that. But you know what? Healing and curing can be two different things. And there are some things to which there is what? No cure, correct? And we're working on that, and that's why we have research. I'm a firm believer in medical research. But balance is important. Staying centered in one's mind and heart is very important to the healing process. Now, I want to show you a picture here. This is myself with my daughter. And most people that know me see me dressed this way. And you can see this later. I'm dressed in 1800 clothes here, right? I like to dress, I like to do living history. And most people that know me, they don't even know me in my real clothes, you know. They know me like this, right? That's my daughter beside me. Her name is Cayman. I got married 6 years ago. I got married to my lovely wife, Dana. She had 2 children, Ozzy, my son, he just turned 12, and Cayman, who just turned 16. I had 3 lovely daughters by a previous marriage, Rachel, Cheryl, and Sahoy. And they're all grown up. They're all grown up now. You know, they're adults now in college doing their thing. And, you know, when I think of Creek medicine, I look at that picture. I have to tell you that I can see this picture 3 different ways, because a lot of Creek medicine has to do with interpretation, insight. Now let me tell you what 3 things I see. I see the past, and I see the present, and I see the future in this picture. Let me explain what I'm talking about. This is the past in the sense that this picture was made on Powwow Day. We have a Thanksgiving Day Powwow, which, by the way, all of you are invited to come to Thanksgiving Day and the day after, right? This was made at Powwow Day. Somebody snapped a picture of us together. She goes and does reenactments with me. She doesn't have a drop of Indian blood in her. She is a white girl. You don't mind me calling that. She's like 4th generation Swedish. I mean, you know, she is a white girl. She'll tell you I'm a white girl, right? But she'll dress out in the Creek clothes, and she knows as much about Creek history as I do. My wife, who has no Indian blood, Dana. I say this about my wife. My wife is very gifted. My wife probably understands more about Indian spirituality and the way of looking at things than a lot of people I know. And she doesn't have a drop of Indian blood. Ponder that for a moment. This picture was made last year. And then I look at it and I see it from another perspective. I'm thinking about today. Let me tell you what happened 2 days ago. 2 days ago on my way up here, I was leaving out to go from Atmore. I get a phone call. Cayman, who is 16, has been driving for the first time. Coming back home, we have 4 puppies. Guess what happened? The favorite puppy of the bunch runs out in front of her car and she runs over and kills her. I mean, everybody's favorite dog. First time this has happened to her. So what did I have to do? As a father and as a healer, I had to make a little detour, go home. I had to go bury a puppy and console my dog. Because that's part of healing. Most of the healing I do is emotional, spiritual type. That's mostly what I work with. I work with a lot of post-traumatic stress syndrome people, that type of thing. Substance abuse, depression, that type of thing. And so when I look at that, I think about, just 2 days ago. 2 days ago I had to go to do that. But then I look at it in a more positive sense and I see the future. Just like I'm looking at some of you out here, some of you students and all, you are the future. So I can look at that picture 3 different ways. There's a multiplicity of ways of looking at it. And so the same thing with concepts of medicine, right? Now, we had dinner last night, had a lovely dinner last night, and a question was posed to me by Mr. Flannery. And he basically said, what does Crete medicine say to the medical community today? what's the takeaway? And he was just asking this, and he didn't know I was going to bring this up. But I put some thought into that, man. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I really wasn't sure where I was going with this talk, even yesterday morning. How many remember the Little Rascals, Buckwheat? Man, you know why I love Buckwheat? Because Buckwheat, man, they mistreated him. He was they always did terrible things to him. But he would persevere and he was strong. You know what he would say? He said this in several episodes and it stuck with me. He said, we don't know where we're going. I don't know where I'm going. We'll know when we get there. And that's true of a lot of things in life. And I really wasn't quite sure where I was going with this talk. Until we had dinner last night. Phyllis was there and this brother was here. We had a great time, but I really went back and thought about that. So here we go. The title of this presentation is Greek Indian Medicine, Past and Present, the Application of Traditional Cultural Knowledge in Today's World. Well, how so? How so? Now, I know some of you get a little bit of professional credit for being here, and that's a good thing, but I hope you get a more takeaway than that, right? I feel a lot more equipped to address this. I'm going to do it right now. The first thing that I would say to you, what traditional Greek medicine says to you in the medical field is this. The human body is not a machine that can simply be fixed when a part breaks down. It's much higher than that. Each one of us is uniquely made. The focus of the traditional healer is on the patient. We need to both question and listen to our patients and their family members. They know their bodies better than anybody else. Though at times that can be a challenging task. And though we can refer to past experiences with a group of case histories of similar nature, one treatment program does not fit all. Decisions must be made on a case-by-case basis with individual needs in mind. And here's another thing, very important to me. We human beings are a marvelous combination of 3 elements. Now, I do this all the time talking about history, and some of you know the answer. I know you do, so you don't blurt it out, Chuck. Okay? All right? This is a coin. It's a commemorative coin, but let's just call it a coin. This is a coin. How many sides to a coin? How many? Come on. 2. 2. Wrong. 3. Wrong. It's 3. Now, have you gone crazy, Robert? No, I haven't. Okay, think about it this way, heads and tails. Now, if we play heads and tails and toss this coin, I guarantee you, you're going to get heads and tails. But what is the third side? The edge. We don't think about that very often, do we? That's the thin part. But why is that important? Because it defines the coin. Very important. And so, what I say to you, just like there's 3 sides to a coin, I say in history, there's the native view, the non, there can be multiple sides, but I'm just saying, a lot of talk that I do, there's the non-native side, the native side, and you have to be the judge and find the truth in the middle, on the third side. Well, just like there's 3 sides to a coin, there's 3 elements of us, and that's body, mind, and spirit. These 3 things are inextricably intertwined, and they function collectively as one. And any problem in one of these 3 areas will affect the other areas. It's important to recognize this in any form of healing process. Good medicine recognizes these 3 holistically And that aids you in finding direction and diagnosis and treatment for that individual. And the emphasis should not be on a final cure, but upon an ongoing healing process. These can be two different things, as I've said before. And I'll tell you where I learned that lesson from. Doing ministry work, you have all sorts of interesting experiences. I learned that lesson from a dying woman. We called her Grandma. She was a member of our congregation. We called her Grandma. She was everybody's grandmother, yeah? In Creek tradition, we would call her beloved woman. And I went to go see her, and I knew she was getting towards the end. I went to go basically say goodbye to her for the last time, and she raised up in the bed, she took a hold of my hand, and she said, "Brother Robert, I got my healing." And I looked at her, and it was very obvious just physically looking at what was happening to her, that she was on her pathway to the other side. She died that next morning. And it wasn't until I was doing her funeral that I understood what she was saying. Her condition was terminal. She knew that. She knew that. She wasn't in psychological denial, all right? She wasn't in psychological denial. She knew there was no cure for her condition, and yet she had found her healing. What did she find? She found the healing from within. She had awakened to and listened to what was inside of her, and as a result, had found a sense of personal balance in her situation. She was not only at peace from within being terminally ill, but she was looking forward to a better existence and was, guess what, prepared to die. And that's why I say the process of healing. Sometimes we're in situations where we're going to lose some folks along the way, right? That's inevitable. But the process of healing is available to everybody all the time if they will embrace that. That process of healing, that process of balance is available. You can't make someone do that. You can't compel them to. But if you can help facilitate that, that's available all the time. Here's another one. Don't mean to sound preachy, but I'm just going to say it this way. Remember, there is a Creator. As we Creeks refer to Him, the breath maker, the source of life and death, of medicine, of ceremony. And we as healers see ourselves very simply as one thing, and that is facilitators. Facilitators of the process of healing. We can never create that practice. And I don't think it hurts to remind yourself daily that everything you need is inside of you. You just need to wake up to it. Some of you, those words may not mean that much to you right now, but they'll hit you down the road. I call it time release. They'll hit you down the road. Listen not only to the voices of wisdom around you, the scholars, the teachers, your colleagues, your friends. Not only, that's what they're there, that's a gift. It's a gift of medicine. Not only listen to them, but also take the time to listen to the voices of our ancestors and the creators that come from within. Words can be powerful medicine. Perspective on a physical object can change its purpose and ultimately aid in healing. I'm going to give you an example of that, okay? Okay, I'm done with my notes now. I don't want to do that, right? Now I'm going to cut loose here. How many of you know what a buckeye is? Okay, here's another question. How many of you know somebody that carries one of these in their pocket? There's always one there. How many of you have one of these yourself? Now, why do you carry it? Why do you carry it?
Luck.
Good luck. Anybody else? Is that why? You know what I'm talking about? This is looks like a chestnut. It's a horse chestnut. They call it a buckeye. Ohio's named after it.
Prevent snake bites.
Why do people carry it in their pocket for good luck? Are you ready for this? It's a creek thing. And it means so much more than that. And I want to share this with you because I think when we're talking about medicine, here's a form of good medicine that you've probably never heard of. I'm going to explain to you where the southern custom of carrying a buckeye for good luck came from. The Muscogee Creek Indians said this. They said that, have you ever met somebody for the first time and it's like you've known them all your life? You know what I'm talking about? That happened to you. I meet thousands of people a year, and I probably have that experience once or twice a year. It's just a profound sense, like I've always known it. Yeah, maybe you said that with my mother, right? I had experience with my wife and I married her. Not deja vu, just an intense. And the way we explain that in traditional belief, and it would be the same thing with a healer and a patient, is that sometimes the Creator, our lives intersect. And we intersect for just a moment in time that's very profound. And we recognize that. And we may go on our way and never see each other again, but sometimes, as the case with my wife and I, we came together and stayed together. Sometimes it's in and out. Sometimes, think about water flowing, right? So here was the deal. Back in that day, if I met you and we had that experience, what we would do is we would exchange Buckeyes. Now here's the deal. You held on to that and I held on to that until you had that experience again. You meet him and you're supposed to pass it on, pass it on, pass it on. Do you ever think about how far a quarter in your pocket travels? How many hands it's been through? Right? There were Buckeyes going all over the place. Back and forth. And when the non-Indians showed up, they could grasp that concept of getting one to remember somebody by, but they like to hang on to things. There's so many things. So what they do, they start, I want to keep that. Right? And then the Indians eventually adopted the same practice, and eventually it went from that beautiful concept to good luck. I want to close out with a poem that I wrote for my wife for a wedding. In a traditional wedding, you just exchange, traditional Creek wedding, you just announce to everybody you get married. There's a period of time of waiting. They don't build a house for it because the house belongs to her. It's matrilineal, right? The house belongs to her. And then we get together in front of everybody and exchange some gifts, and that's it, man. End of ceremony. Well, we had a traditional ceremony, accommodation, modern accommodation. We had all these elements there. But one of the things we gave each other was poetry. She writes poetry, and I write poetry. And so, the poem that I wrote for her was called The River Called We, W-E. You see, Indian people are more we-focused than me-focused. That's how it works. And that's true of a lot of cultures. And so I wrote this poem called The River Called We. And I wrote this poem, and I got to thinking about it with time, and I started teaching my Creek classes and talking about this, and I said, my God, I can subtitle this, The Spirit of the Buckeye. When would you give somebody a buckeye? When you had an experience like this. This is this point, okay? I was once a tiny stream, born to the earth from a bubbling spring. Up and out and down I flowed, knowing not where I would go. With time, I grew deeper and winding, seeking something but never finding, passing miles in a single day gone, but never escaping the feeling of alone. And then that day when we did meet, flowing together creek unto creek, marveled I as our waters mingled. Your clarity and coolness caused me to tingle. United together under the laughing sun, I had little understanding of this mystery done. I have long since forgotten that sad single me that with you became the river called we. The answer is come, as has to so few. The reason I flow, to meet up with you. And that is when you give somebody a buckeye. And that is good medicine. In traditional terms, that's good medicine. Does anybody have any questions? I know somebody's got to have some questions. Everybody always does.
You've got time for questions. Now's your opportunity.
If you have those subjects you want to ask about and are afraid to ask it for everybody, you can ask me privately, but it would be better to ask it out. Yes.
Why don't you tell us about it?
Okay, you want to tell you a couple of things real quick about that? Be fine. Does anybody else have another question specifically before I do that? I mean, I'm going to hang around if you want to come ask me something. Okay, real quick, a few things that I have here, very quickly. I've got some shakers here, a variety of shakers, which can be used in our practice. There's a turtle shaker, here's another one. I have a horn shaker. This is a hand drum. Sometimes the drums are used in ceremonies. This is a hand drum made from a gourd. Okay? This is sweetgrass, which we don't really have here. You get this a lot today. They burn this in some forms of sage that come from out west. And that's kind of universally now accepted among all the tribes. But we don't use those plants. Creeks, we use combinations of cedar, combinations of sassafras, combinations of other plants for that type of purpose, for purification purposes. And I told the lady here that she mentioned the drum. Y'all, everybody knows this, right? Right? You know where that came from? I hate to pop your bubble, but listen. I'm a film major. In the days when movies started, they were silent, right? Remember Al Jolson and the jazz singer? By the way, I'm an expert on silent film. I can tell you anything about silent film you want to know. Okay? From D.W. Griffith on up to Al Jolson. That's what I specialized in. I love silent films. But when sound came to movies, they were making cowboy and western movies back in those days, and the Indians were crazy. They dropped out of trees. They were drunk all the time, killing them. They were savages, right? Savages, right? And when sound came to movies, these little serial trailers, they call them, almost like a soap opera. You watch one of those every week. Here would come the Indians, attacking, and guess what? They'd hear this in the background. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, they're on the warpath. And here comes the cavalry at the last minute. Dun, 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 and then they'd save everybody, right? You know where this sound came from? It came from Hollywood, folks. I'm sorry. I hate to bust it up. It came from Hollywood. Nobody played drum like that back then. They taught 200-something tribes. Nobody played drum like that. Okay? Trust my word, it came from Hollywood. Walt Disney used it, Peter Pan, John Wayne used it, and to this day, even at powwows, you'll hear that. You'll hear it at ball games too, won't you, right? But just remember that. Did play drum like that.
How would a creek use that?
Okay, this is my medicine drum. When I say medicine drum, when I hit this, and I'm up close to you, you can feel the energy off of this, right? It depends on what you're saying. It could be a slow beat, it could be a fast beat, it could be a combination of beats like, and that's probably where they got the boom, boom, boom. There's different variations, but you know what this represents? It represents the drum inside of you. You go, those of you going to cardiology, what am I talking about? Heart. Okay. It's an outward expression then. Let's believe that the drum, a lot of tribes believe the drum carries your prayers. Prayer. It's the beat of life, master breath, etc., right? Just a couple of other things. We got some baskets here. This is one thing I probably need to tell you about. This is something you won't get to see very often. This is a turkey feather plug. Turkey feather plug. This was made by my sister. It took her 3 months to make. The breast feathers off of the wild turkey are iridescent. They have colors in them. It's a feather about this long. You have to cut the tip off. You have to make your webbing here, and you have to tie those on one by one. My sister was offered about $4,000 for this cloak by a museum director who recognized it, right? And she said, no. She says, I'll never make another one. I'm going to give it to my brother. I've been using it since then. That was 1993. I've been using it since 1993. It's a beautiful piece. It's a good example of what prehistoric fashion. It's a great example of just using the resources and materials we had. One of the amazing things about this, feathers are one of the best insulators. You see holes in this, right? Feathers, you can put your bare arm over this and instantaneously feel your body. Instantaneously, right? So it's just a beautiful thing. This is what I use with the kids a lot. Put it on. Okay. And by the way, one other thing. This is a deer skin. I'll get you next. Just very quickly.
Turkey.
This is a buck skin. Piece of deer skin. Right, deer leather.
Cake.
If I asked you to loan me a buck, what would you give me? $1, right? Why do we call $1 a buck? What about that? That deer back there, male deer is called what? Buck. Did you know we didn't know what money was? And when we met the Europeans, the French, the English, Spanish, guess what they wanted from us? They wanted this stuff. This became our money, man. Hey, you got some beads? I'll give you a buck. Right? Okay? That's where that came from. My wife works with Young Living. They do pharmaceutical grade essential oils. What we call aromatherapy and all that was a huge part of what we did. Huge part. It actually, y'all know what sassafras is, right? Some of you know what sassafras is? I have a sassafras root up here somewhere. You can pick it up, sniff it. This was used quite a bit in aromatherapy. If you were real tense, you would smell this root and it would calm you down, right? Same concept like with essential oil. We use oils, we use massage, we use a lot of different techniques. A lot of things that we call holistic medicine, they alternative, we use them. Sweating was a fairly common technique that was used primarily for self-purification. I have a sweat lodge on my property. I live in a place called Dixie, Alabama, if you can believe that, next to the Conecuh National Forest, a little unincorporated town, right? Dixie, Alabama, where that came from, but anyway. I live on the edge of the Conecuh National Forest. I have 8 acres, and I built a sweat lodge. Now, the thing is, what I call a sweat lodge, a sweating area, our sweat lodges were very different than the Western ones. And from what little bit I can glean and read, ours were more meditative and more, I've had people, I put up to 12 people in mine, and mine's partially in the ground. It's submerged in the ground. You sit in mine, and your heads and shoulders are above ground. And then there's a dome. And how many's ever been to Mount Bluff? You know the big Temple Mountain? You know what they found behind they found a huge sweat lodge. A huge sweat lodge there. And they actually have a board there now where you can see a schematic of it, where they excavated and what it looked like and that kind of thing. So yeah, sweating is something that was fairly universal amongst the tribes. I tell you what, really and truly, because I don't feel. Listen, I'm not going to get up here and tell you that I can represent this problem. There's one book I can recommend to you, and it's called Creek Indian Medicine Ways. Okay, and it is written by the lady who wrote this was Ann Jordan, and she interviewed David Lewis Jr., who in my opinion is an Oklahoma, who in my opinion is a Hills Highlander, a true primary Hills Highlander, right? And this is a very tastefully done book, very respectfully done. Y'all, there's a lot of books out there that are not that way. But this one here, Creek Indian Medicine Ways, which the primary source for this is called The Enduring Power of Muskogee Religion. That word's religion. But David Lewis, in my opinion, if you want to know a little more, a little bit deeper into this, this is a really good start, I think, in my opinion.
Let's thank Mr. Thoreau.
Okay, thank you.